Alrighty, test drive time. So just a little bit of a brief overview on what we have here at the Helm station. I've got a couple of the Raymarine flat screen displays. So now at the moment, I've got the GPS on port and the engine diagnostics on starboard. But you can just do multiple feeds on that, obviously. Moving my way down here, this is the Cummins digital diagnostics display. And then I've got a rudder angle indicator. I've got all my boat systems from everything from horns, sunroof, anchor operation, blowers, wipers. It's good to see individual wiper operation, by the way, and the zip wakes, which we're going to test in a second. I've got my Raymarine autopilot, got my quick anchor windlass, so that's the remote anchor operation from the Helm. We've got an air conditioning outlet, the VHF just here, and the throttle base is right here on starboard. And aft of that is the joystick. So that all feels quite natural to hand. The wheel, standard marine wheel, that one is fixed. Don't really feel like you would need to adjust that for this style of boat because this is more of a cruising boat, go places, set it on your cruising speed and go to your destination kind of thing. So I think that makes sense. And then in terms of the ergonomics here at the Helm, standing up, I don't know whether this is going to be a boat that you stand all the time. I think this is going to be more of a seated cruising, but you might want to stand in a parking situation. And from my height, 5'7", I've got easy visibility to the bow, and I've got easy visibility to the stern. I cannot see the stern platform. I can't see the stern platform, but I can see the stern. So you might have to just do a little bit of calculation for that or get a reversing camera if that's something you're concerned about. The drive system itself, it's worth talking about it because this is a shaft drive. You don't always see shaft drives in boats around this 42-foot size length anymore. You know, a lot of boats are going IPS. You still have a few stern drives working their way up into that size. So we have a V-drive shaft, and for those of you that don't know, V-drive means that the engine is facing forwards, and then there is a V-drive which sends the shaft out the back of the boat like that. Now, the reason why that you would do that on a boat is to give you more space internally. So we've got a beautiful accommodation set up, which we're going to go through in the walkthrough. Subscribe for that. But the only way we get this much space and volume in a boat of 42 feet in length is if you minimize the space in the engine bay. And if you want to achieve shaft drives, that's how you do it. So you bunch it up rather than having a straight shaft that takes up more space. That's how you do it. Now, and shaft drives, they behave differently to IPSs and stern drives. They're a lot more torquey because you've got two stonking great big propellers about yay size underneath the boat, and so if you imagine the amount of water they're moving aft and forward when you engage and disengage the throttle, you will feel it more on a shaft drive boat. So it's arguably maybe it's the traditional way of driving a boat, and a lot of people are going to enjoy this in a parking sense, and we will pull this into the dock a little bit later. But anyway, I'm going to roll the boat through some speeds and just talk to you about what I'm experiencing. So we've got two shafts through the V-drive. We've got rudders aft of each propeller, and those shafts, they're in like little half tunnels, if you like. I was talking about the Helm ergonomics before I got distracted. So flip up bolster here at the Helm seat. So I'll put that down. So yeah, I feel like driving this boat, you're probably going to enjoy it from a seated position because this is the sort of boat you're going to go places, set it, drive, stop, and enjoy the destination. This isn't a speedboat, this is a cruiser. So I feel like this is where you're going to probably spend most of your time, and I'm comfortable. I've got a footrest. The seat gives me lots of support. I reckon I could do a little bit more lower back So if you're on a long journeys, you might have a small cushion behind here, but other than that, the foam's comfortable. You've got enough space. If your bum was a little bit bigger, you're still going to fit in this seat. And yeah, so this is good. I do like having this side window here, and that's really easy to operate. That just slides up and down. Looks like a Lumar operation there. And I probably, even though I've got the air conditioning here at the helm, which is going to keep me comfortable on a hot day, I like having that just to get some fresh air in as well. And just probably out of view, I've got two very decent size cup holders. So that's, again, you'll have a beer with a cooler in there, no problems. That's not going to be any issues at all. So I've got some kayakers ahead of me. I'm just going to let them clear before we get this boat on the plane, but I'll start just taking it through the motions. Now, I'm going to stand up for this because I'm not used to this Cummins display, and I'm just, oh, there we go. I've got fuel flow just here. So I'm going to talk about the speed, the revs, and the fuel flow as we take it through the rev range. I'm just sitting on 900 revs. I'm not making any wash, and I'm currently doing 6.5 knots SOG. We don't have any tide here, or not much to speak of on the harbour today, and it's calm conditions. The boat itself, it'll be about 9.5 tons empty, and then you've got 1,100 of fuel, and then 400 of water. I doubt we've got water on board. Actually, Mike, you'll know. Do we have any water tanks of fuel full? 80%. How about the fuel? Half. Okay, so we got about 600 litres of fuel, and we've got half a tank of water on board. Mike, myself, a couple of bags. Other than that, it's an empty boat. So 6.5 knots at 900 revs, and I'll just take it through the motions until we get to that point where it's no longer a no wash kind of setup. Going through a couple of waves here. So just rolling through 1,000 and 1,100. So 425 horsepower. These are big, torquey, powerful diesels. You will feel a little bit more vibration on a setup like this through the beginning of the rev range. That's normal. So until we get up and get going, it is something to be expected of a style of boat like this. But at 1,100 revs, yeah, it's just acceptable, and I'm doing 8 knots. 8 knots at 1,100 revs, and my fuel flow is 9 litres a side. And then we'll just take her up to 1,200. Feels like she wants to go a bit more. Yeah, see that noise levels have just moderated a little bit, so that's just hitting 1,300 and 12 litres a side. 1,300 gets us to 8.8 knots. And I'm now starting to make some waves, so that would be probably unacceptable in a no wash zone. So let's just find a straight line. There's a lot of kayakers out today because it's lockdown here in Sydney, and every Tom, Dick and Harry's decided he's going to take up kayaking. So I'm just going to try and avoid them. 9 knots, 1,400, rolling through 1,500. I'm just going to commit to this now. You don't really sit half off the plane. You might as well just get onto it. So 1,700, 1,800, 10 knots, 11 knots, 12 knots, 13 knots, 1,900, 2,000 revs, 15, 16, 2,100, 2,200. I'm accelerating really slowly just to see how this thing feels, but 2,300, 20 knots, the boat feels like she wants to sit there quite comfortably. Let's look at our fuel flow at 45 litres an hour at 21 knots, 2,300 revs. So this, to me, feels like a slow cruise. I got a little bit of bow raise, but nothing that's going to hinder my visibility because of the design of the boat. This is absolutely safe and acceptable. Now, this feels like a slow cruise because I'm just going to notch it up a little bit. Just giving you the heads up, I have already done the drone shoot on this, and I saw the boat from the aerial, so I've got a little bit of an idea of how she drives, and it felt like 26 knots. There we go, we're rolling through 2450, 2,500 revs. that's 24 knots SOG, and I'm getting 60 litres a side. That's really starting to feel very comfortable, and the boat, she likes to drive straight and true. That's a little bit of a function of having a shaft drive and having rudders. She tracks quite straight and easily. And the other thing, you will notice a difference to how a boat turns going from IPS to shaft. And once again, that's because you're trailing a couple of rudders behind you. The steering's going to feel a little bit heavier, and so it should. So if you're coming from a smaller boat, if you're coming from an outboard with power assisted steering, or if you're coming from an IPS and you drive a boat like this and the steering feels heavier, that's normal, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, this slow cruise at 21 knots, moderate cruise at 25. Let's just give it wide open throttles and see what happens. I'm going to say 25 is probably the fast cruise, but we've got plenty more in the rev range here. 2650 revs, rolling through 27 knots, 2,770, 2,800. Oh yeah. So just letting you know, we have the zip brakes. So that's an alternative piece of technology compared to your traditional trim tabs. They're like deflectors. I haven't activated them. I don't feel the need at the moment. We are in flat conditions. I feel like this whole form is going to look after you in transit without bothering and having to worry too much about the trim settings. I feel like you would lower the nose or adjust the trim settings when the boat is in upwind sort of choppy conditions, or maybe you've got uneven loading or it's a little bit windy. But we'll see, we'll keep playing with that. It's just, at the moment, it doesn't feel too necessary. So I'm now on 2,900 revs, and we've all made the way all the way up to 30 knots. I didn't actually make it to wide open, so there's wide open. Oh yeah, you can notice that power. We've got a little speedboat crossing my bow here, so I'm just going to go aft of him. And I'm rolling through 31 knots, 31.5 knots, 32 knots, 3,050 to 3,100 revs. That's probably the max we're going to get out of this thing, and that's good. You know, this is a boat that you go on holidays. This is your floating weekend, and this is your waterfront home, and it also does 30 knots, which is great. So, but we'll take it back to a more sensible speed, and now I'm going to do a turn. We'll go back the direction we came. So I'm finding myself dipping my head a little bit in the turn because the lowering roof does block my visibility somewhat. But as I said before, I feel like I would be sitting down. Yep, that's good. And yeah, 26 knots. Super comfortable. So this is why you have an autopilot. So as I said before, this is a boat for going places. Look at this. She's just tracking straight. That's a nice balanced hull. Shaft drives, rudders hanging off the back, giving us some directional stability. 27 knots. Hands off, set the autopilot. I don't even have the autopilot on, might I add, but you could just set the autopilot, stay comfortable, set your temperature, and this thing is going to take you where you want to go, which is essentially what you want with a boat like this. So, you know, there's no real point me taking it through tight turns because it's not that sort of boat. But what I can comment on is that the motion through the little bit of swell we have here, couple of boat waves that we've just cut our way through, it's excellent visibility from seated position. It's dry ride, because the wash, I can see the wash going out to the side here. I haven't had anything want to make its way up and over the bow, and excellent speed return at 26, 27 knots for 2,600 revs on a fuel burn of 55 litres a side. You know, you can go places, 110 litres an hour running at 27 knots. That's pretty good. So yeah, no, I'm impressed with this. I think we might just pull her in here. We've got a couple more kayakers up ahead, so we'll take her off the plane. I'll just talk about the experience as we do. So, like any boat, just let that speed dissipate. You will have a stern wave that's going to catch up with you. You don't want to bring that up on the back of the boat. And so I'll just gently take her off the plane, watch that wave catching up. I'm finding myself not wanting to stand up. It's completely comfortable. So there we go, down to 1,700 revs, 12 knots. You definitely wouldn't cruise around at 12 knots in this boat because you're gonna make surf waves and piss people off. So you would bring the speed nice back to that 8 to 7 knot SOG. Seems to be where she's a non-offensive vessel for other people out on the water. So with these big torquey props, we're getting that 8 knots. Here we go, 1,000 revs, 7.5, just dropping. Yeah, this thing does what she says she's gonna do. This is gonna get you places. I'm impressed.